The outpost at Sable Hollow was never meant to be permanent. It was a listening post, nothing more. Steel sunk into ice, sensors pointed at the sky, waiting for something terrible to happen. Most of the time, nothing did, and that suited Edwin just fine. Outside, the wind screamed across the frozen plains like an animal being skinned alive. It wasn't a clean sound. It tore, rattled, vibrated through metal and bone alike. Inside the outpost, the noise softened into a dull, rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to rest. Edwin sat alone in the command chair, a relic bolted to the floor decades ago. The padding was cracked. The armrests were worn smooth by hands that no longer existed. He didn't bother adjusting it. Comfort was a luxury for people who planned to stay alive. The main monitor showed the sky above Sable Hollow. Fractured, distorted, bruised. A black aurora was spreading across the atmosphere, swallowing stars and twisting sensor readings into nonsense. It wasn't beautiful, not like the auroras on tourist worlds. This one looked like a wound that refused to heal. Atmospheric instability increasing, the automated system said calmly. Edwin ignored it. He'd been ignoring warnings most of his life. He lifted a mug of synthesized coffee and took a slow sip. Tasted like burnt metal and disappointment. Same as always. He set it down and flexed his fingers, feeling the faint tremor in his left hand. Old damage. Permanent. A reminder. This was supposed to be the end of the road for him. No medals. No commands. No screaming radios or burning skies. Just ice, silence, and time enough to forget names. He had chosen Sable Hollow because no one came here unless they were lost or desperate. And Edwin knew what desperation sounded like. A small spherical drone drifted down from the ceiling, its single lens glowing faintly. Its movements were casual, almost lazy, as if it had learned boredom from its owner. 3 hours until ionization interference reaches total blackout, the drone said, which is only marginally worse than our current communication quality. Congratulations. Edwin didn't look at it. Quiet. The drone hovered anyway. It always did. You know, most people your age retire somewhere warm, with sunlight, and other people. Most people didn't survive what I did, Edwin replied. That shut the drone up for a moment. He leaned forward, studying the sensor readouts. Gravity fluctuations, magnetic distortion, energy patterns that didn't behave the way physics textbooks said they should. The storm wasn't random. It never was. Something was waking up. Edwin had seen storms like this before. Not here, but in places where too many people died at once. Places where the universe seemed to remember violence. His jaw tightened. He stood and walked to the narrow viewport, pressing his gloved hand against the cold glass. Beyond it stretched endless white, ice broken by jagged obsidian rock, carved by ancient pressure and newer disasters. No cities, no lights, just emptiness. Perfect. This was where ghosts came to rot. Behind him, the drone hesitated. Your heart rate is elevated. Stop monitoring it. I can't. It's part of my core programming. Edwin smiled thinly. Figures. He turned back toward the lockers lining the far wall. Heavy. Reinforced. Unopened in years. Inside them slept things he had promised never to touch again. Tools designed to turn men into weapons and weapons into monsters. He didn't open them. Instead, he returned to his chair and waited, listening to the storm hammer the outpost like it was trying to get inside. Edwin had come here to be forgotten. He had come here to die quietly. He didn't know yet that the storm was about to remember his name. The signal cut through the static like a blade through cloth. One moment the channel was nothing but noise, screaming interference, broken packets, the meaningless chatter of a dying atmosphere. The next, a single waveform spiked across the monitor, thin but deliberate, structured, artificial. Edwin straightened in his chair. That's impossible, the drone said immediately. Channel 4 is dead air. Has been for years. Nothing reaches us on that band. Look closer, Edwin said. He leaned forward, fingers gliding across the haptic interface. With practiced ease, he peeled away layers of interference, isolating a narrow slice of the spectrum. The storm fought him every step of the way, distorting, scrambling, resisting. Then the sound came through. Edwin, his breath caught. The voice was rough, strained, familiar in a way that hurt. Edwin froze, every muscle locking as if his body had recognized the threat before his mind could. His heart slammed against his ribs, fast and violent. "No," he whispered. The speakers crackled again. "Edwin, if you can hear this, position hold. Broken arrow." The words punched straight through him. He knew that voice. He would have recognized it through fire, through vacuum, through the end of the universe itself. Sergeant Kale, dead for 10 years. Edwin had watched orbital fire turn the valley where Kale stood into molten glass. There had been no body, no recovery, just a crater and silence. His hands trembled. "Run audio fingerprint analysis," Edwin said, his voice tight. The drone spun in place, optic lens whirring. "Processing, comparing against archival combat logs." The seconds stretched. "Match confirmed," the drone said. "Voice identity. Kalen Var, status deceased. Confidence interval, 99%. Edwin leaned back slowly, as if the chair might collapse beneath him. "It's a recording." "Negative," the drone replied, and for once, its tone lacked humor. "Timestamp is current." And Edwin, "There's something else." A hologram bloomed in the air, jagged peaks and valleys of the audio waveform. Beneath the voice pattern ran another signal, tighter, sharper, almost hidden. "That secondary frequency," the drone continued, "is a neurosync modulation loop, designed to provoke emotional recall and compliance." Edwin stared at it. "It's bait," the drone said quietly. "Whoever sent this knows you, knows your history. They are wearing the voice of someone you trusted to make you open the door." The speakers crackled again. "Edwin, please. I'm pinned. They're closing in." The voice broke just slightly, exactly the way Kale's had, right before the bombardment hit. Edwin closed his eyes. He had survived because he'd learned to ignore voices like this, to treat pleas as noise, to walk away when instinct screamed to run toward the fire. That was how you lived. "Ignore it," Edwin said, forcing the words out. "Shut the channel down." "Already attempted," the drone replied. "The signal is adaptive. It's following your filters." The voice came again, softer now. "You said you'd have my back." Edwin's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't anyone's backup. He had chosen isolation over heroics for a reason. Outside, the storm surged, rattling the walls as if impatient. "Probability assessment," the drone said. 87% chance this is a trap. 62% chance of hostile presence near the signal source." Edwin opened his eyes. "And the remaining 13%? he asked. The drone hesitated. "That someone is actually out there. And dying." Edwin stood. The chair scraped loudly across the floor, the sound sharp in the confined space. He stared at the lockers again, the ones he hadn't opened in years. "Prepare the rover," Edwin said. The drone dipped lower. "You're making the face." "What face?" "The one you make right before you do something irreversible." Edwin didn't answer. He walked toward the back of the outpost, each step heavier than the last. "I came here to disappear," he muttered. "But I am not letting a ghost decide how I die." The signal repeated Kale's voice one last time, whispering his name like a prayer. And despite everything he knew, despite the trap, the logic, the cost, Edwin stepped into the storm. The storm hit Edwin the moment he stepped outside. It wasn't just cold, it was aggressive. The wind slammed into him with enough force to shove his weight backward, clawing at his armor, screaming through every seam like it wanted inside his lungs. Snow didn't fall so much as attack, driven sideways in blinding sheets that erased depth and distance. He lowered his head and pushed forward. The rover crawled across the ice like a stubborn insect, its treads biting into blackened frost. Every few meters, the ground groaned beneath it, ancient ice flexing under pressures older than memory. Above, the black aurora pulsed, vast, bruised ribbons of violet and abyssal dark twisting across the sky like something alive and irritated. Signal source 2 kilometers ahead, the drone said through his helmet. Thermal readings unstable, multiple heat signatures, and one very large mammalian mass. Edwin frowned. A mammal? Out here. Genetically uplifted, if I had to guess, the drone replied. And bleeding. That made him accelerate. The wreck appeared suddenly, looming out of the storm like a fallen carcass. A transport ship lay half buried in snow, its hull scarred but not shattered. The engines had been sliced clean off, metal edges glowing faintly even in the brutal cold. That's not a crash, Edwin muttered. That's an execution. He killed the rover lights and dismounted, boots crunching into ice. The air stung his eyes, his breath fogging instantly. He circled the wreck, rifle raised, senses sharp. Then he saw her. She lay a few meters from the hull, half covered by fresh snow, her flight suit torn open at the shoulder. Dark blood stained the white ground beneath her, already freezing into brittle crystals. Her ears, long, tapered, furred, twitched weakly as she breathed. Farallon, cat pilot. Edwin took a step toward her. The growl stopped him cold. Something massive shifted in the storm. Snow slid away from a towering shape as a wolf rose to its full height, easily as large as a hovercar. Its fur was thick and matted with blood, a deep gash running along its flank. Yellow eyes locked onto Edwin with terrifying focus. The growl wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Edwin slowly lowered his rifle. Easy, he said, voice steady through the helmet speakers. I'm not the one who did this. The wolf moved anyway, just one step, but it was enough. It planted itself between Edwin and the pilot, teeth bared, muscles coiled despite the injury. A heavy metal collar circled its neck, faint red lights pulsing beneath the grime. A tracker wolf, border grade, intelligent, loyal to the point of death. Edwin exhaled slowly. You're protecting her. The wolf didn't blink. Snow whipped around them, filling the silence with motion and noise. Edwin took another careful step forward. She's dying, he said. You know that. The wolf snarled, deeper now, tried to shift its weight and failed. Its injured leg buckled, sending it crashing partially into the snow with a sharp whine it couldn't fully suppress. The sound stirred the pilot. She gasped, body arching in pain, eyes snapping open. Gold irises with vertical pupils locked onto Edwin instantly. She reached for the pistol at her belt, but her fingers were stiff, useless with cold. Don't move, Edwin ordered, kneeling several meters away. I'm here to help. Her gaze flicked to his hands, to the faint silver filaments visible beneath his gloves. Her eyes widened. Field, she rasped. Her breath hitched violently. Edwin stiffened. Save your strength. Don't, she whispered, coughing. Pink froth dotted her lips. Don't use it. The words hit him harder than the storm. Who are you? He demanded. She swallowed, shivering uncontrollably. Someone who knows what it costs. Her head rolled slightly, eyes fluttering. If you bend it, they'll see you. Edwin glanced instinctively at the horizon. The storm swallowed everything, but he knew better. Sensors didn't need eyes. The wolf growled again, weaker now, but still defiant. I don't have time for this, Edwin muttered. The drone crackled urgently in his ear. Multiple fast-moving signatures approaching from the south. Skimmers. Military grade. Edwin cursed. This wasn't a random ambush. This was a hunt. They hadn't just shot the ship down, they had waited. Used the distress signal as a lure. Used Kale's voice to draw him out. He looked at the cat pilot bleeding into the snow. At the wolf refusing to abandon her even as its strength bled away. If he dragged them, they wouldn't make it. If he waited, the skimmers would be here in minutes. His left hand twitched. No, he whispered to himself. The pilot's eyes cracked open again. She focused on him with surprising clarity. Please, she said. If you use it, They won't stop coming. Edwin met her gaze. I already know that, he said quietly. He clenched his fists. The sensation was immediate, violent. Gravity grabbed him from the inside, yanking at his spine and skull as if the universe had hooked him by the soul. The storm seemed to pause, snow hanging suspended for half a heartbeat before being blown aside. Edwin reached out with his mind. Not magic. Math. Force. Pain. The snow exploded outward in a perfect ring as the localized gravity field snapped into place. The pilot and the wolf lifted from the ground, weightless, wrapped in a shimmering distortion that bent light and sound. The wolf yelped in panic, thrashing weakly. Easy, Edwin grunted, blood trickling from his nose inside the helmet. I've got you. The drone screamed in his ear. You're lighting up every scanner within 50 kilometers. Let them look, Edwin snarled. He turned and ran. The floating bodies followed behind him, dragged through the storm like ghosts bound to his will. Every step felt like wading through wet concrete. The pressure in his skull built, memories blurring at the edges. The rover ramp hissed open. Edwin shoved them inside with a final, brutal effort and released the field. They dropped gently onto the metal deck. Edwin collapsed against the hull, gasping, vision swimming. Outside, the storm screamed louder, and far away engines howled in answer. The rover lurched forward the moment Edwin slammed the hatch shut. Its engines screamed in protest as the treads bit into the ice, clawing for traction while the storm tried to tear it sideways. Edwin barely registered the motion. He was on his knees, one hand braced against the metal floor, the other pressed to his helmet as pain detonated behind his eyes. The field backlash came in waves. First the nausea, sharp and disorienting. Then the heat, like molten wire dragged through his skull. He tasted copper. Somewhere distant, an alarm chimed, ignored and unresolved. You exceeded safe output by 300%, the drone said, hovering anxiously near the ceiling. That was irresponsible. Heroic, perhaps, but deeply irresponsible. Not now, Edwin rasped. He forced himself upright and staggered into the driver's seat. His vision swam, edges blurring, but he keyed the controls anyway. The rover surged ahead, headlights carving twin tunnels through the screaming snow. Behind him, in the cargo bay, the wolf dragged itself forward on its forelegs, positioning its massive body protectively beside the unconscious pilot. His breath came in harsh, wet pulls. Blood streaked the deck beneath it. Edwin glanced back once. The wolf's yellow eyes met his, no longer hostile, but wary. Calculating. The animal had felt the field. It knew something unnatural had happened. Good, Edwin muttered. Hate me later. Live now. The drone's voice sharpened. Pursuers closing fast. 3 skimmers. Military vectoring. They are not attempting ranged engagement. They want us intact, Edwin said. Figures. He yanked the controls hard left. The rover skidded, nearly fishtailing as it veered toward a jagged cluster of ice spires ahead. Razor-thin towers of frozen obsidian that stabbed up from the plain like broken teeth. No sane pilot would take a skimmer through them at speed. Edwin did. The rover slammed over uneven terrain, suspension groaning as it tore into the spire field. Ice shards shattered against the hull, sparks flying as metal scraped rock. Behind them, the skimmers slowed. 2 have peeled off, the drone reported. 1 is still pursuing. Aggressive. Stupid. Edwin grinned despite the pain. That one's mine. The remaining skimmer tried to follow and paid for it. A sudden gust slammed it sideways into a spire. Its stabilizers screamed, engines flaring as it barely recovered and pulled back. Silence followed. Only the storm remained. Edwin didn't slow until the outpost lights loomed ahead, dim beacons in a sea of white. He brought the rover in hot, slamming it into the docking cradle with little finesse. The moment the engines cut, exhaustion hit him like a hammer. He opened the hatch and staggered out, dragging the pilot first, then returning for the wolf. The animal snarled weakly when Edwin touched it, but didn't bite. Yeah, Edwin grunted. I don't like me either. Inside, The outpost felt unnaturally quiet. The storm's howl muted by reinforced walls. The warmth hit him immediately, making the cold in his bones ache as it retreated. He laid the pilot on the cot near the heater and stripped off his helmet. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot, nose bleeding freely now. He wiped it absently with his sleeve. The wolf limped in after him, collapsing near the heater with a low, rumbling groan. Steam rose from its blood-soaked fur. "Medical scan," Edwin said, voice hoarse. The drone zipped over them, projecting diagnostics. "Pilot. Severe hypothermia. 3 fractured ribs. Internal bruising. Wolf. Deep laceration, muscle damage, no organ compromise. Tough creature." Edwin grabbed the medkit. He worked fast, hands steady despite the tremor. Pressure bandages. Thermal patches. A splint for the wolf's leg, applied carefully and quickly. Too quickly for a man who was supposedly just a hermit. The pilot stirred as he worked. Her eyes fluttered open. Gold pupils dilated as she focused on him. "You shouldn't have," she whispered. Edwin didn't look up. "Get in line. They'll keep coming," she said. "You know that now." "Yes," Edwin replied flatly. "I do." She swallowed. "You used it." He met her gaze at last. "Once." Her expression flickered, not fear. Understanding. "Once is enough," she said softly. The drone interrupted. "Minor complication. That distress signal you responded to? It wasn't just a broadcast." Edwin froze. "Explain." "It was a handshake," the drone said. "When we listened, it pinged back. Transmitted our location. Exact coordinates." Silence settled over the room. The pilot closed her eyes. "They know where you live." Edwin straightened slowly. Outside, the storm deepened. The aurora pulsed brighter, casting warped shadows across the walls like reaching hands. He looked at the lockers again, at the sealed past he had tried to bury. "I chose this," Edwin said quietly. "The moment I stepped outside." He turned back to the pilot and the wolf. "And I don't make the same mistake twice." Outside, engines began to howl again, closer this time. The hunt had begun. The outpost sealed itself with a low metallic thud, locks engaging in sequence as external sensors went dark one by one. Edwin stood still for a moment after the final lock engaged, listening, not to the storm, but to the silence inside his own head. It was louder than the wind. The pilot lay on the cot, her breathing shallow but steady now, the thermal patches glowing softly against her pale fur. The wolf had dragged itself closer to the heater, massive body curled protectively near her feet. Its eyes never left Edwin. "You can relax," Edwin said without looking at it. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." The wolf snorted softly. Not agreement. Tolerance. The drone hovered between them, projecting status readouts. "We have approximately 30 minutes before the skimmers regroup and attempt a perimeter sweep. Possibly less if they brought infantry." "They will," the pilot murmured. Edwin turned. She was awake now, propped slightly on one elbow despite the pain. Her ears twitched as she focused on him. "You're not pirates," she continued. "Pirates would have fired missiles and stripped the wreck. These are wardens." Edwin's expression hardened. "Border Authority." She nodded. "Silas Brack's people." The name settled heavily in the room. "That explains the voice," Edwin said. "Psych warfare unit. They still digging up the dead to use as keys?" "Yes," she replied quietly. "Because it works." He didn't argue. "What did you steal?" Edwin asked. Her eyes flicked to the wolf. The animal shifted, metal collar catching the light. Edwin noticed it properly for the first time. Thick, reinforced, scarred from use. "Not just a tracker. A data vault," the pilot said. "Inside the collar." The drone chimed. "Confirmed. Encrypted storage detected. High grade. Shielded against remote access." Edwin crossed his arms. "So they shot you down for a hard drive." "They shot us down because of what's on it," she corrected. She swallowed, then continued. "Names, coordinates, recorded orders. Proof that Brack is disappearing people, Journalists, scientists, entire settlements, anyone who gets too close to the anomalies. Edwin's jaw tightened. And you? He asked. You just happened to be the delivery service? I was paid to transport medical supplies, she said. Then I realized the client lied. When I reached the outpost, everyone was already dead. The wolf growled low, a sound full of memory. That collar belonged to a journalist, she said. The wolf was his tracker. Wouldn't leave the body. Edwin glanced at the animal again, seeing something different now. Not just muscle and instinct, but purpose. You took the collar anyway, Edwin said. I took the truth, she replied, and ran. The outpost shuddered slightly as a gust of wind slammed into it. Somewhere outside, something metallic scraped against the ice. They'll surround us, Edwin said. Probe defenses. Look for a weak point. You don't sound surprised. I've been hunted before, he replied. The pilot studied him more closely now. The scars, the stiffness, the way his left hand trembled when he thought no one was looking. You're not just a hermit, she said. No, Edwin replied. I'm retired. From what? He didn't answer. The drone predictably did. From being very bad news. Edwin shot it a look. Quiet. The pilot smiled faintly, then winced as pain flared. She pressed a hand to her ribs, breathing through it. My name's Annie, she said after a moment. Edwin nodded once. Edwin. She waited. He didn't offer more. Your drone called you boss, Annie said. That's not a habit machines pick up randomly. It's sarcasm, Edwin replied. I programmed it that way. I didn't program him, the drone protested. I evolved. Annie almost laughed. Almost. She looked down at her hands. You shouldn't have saved us. I know, Edwin said. They won't stop now, she continued. Even if you kill the squad outside, more will come. Brack doesn't forgive loose ends. Edwin leaned against the wall, arms folded. Good. That made her look up. I'm done running, he said. I ran for 10 years. Silence stretched between them. What happens now? Annie asked. Edwin looked around the outpost. At the thin walls, the aging systems, the locker he still hadn't opened. Now, he said, we wait. We let them think we're scared. Then we make them make a mistake. The wolf lifted its head, ears pricking. Your wolf agrees, the drone noted. He is exhibiting heightened alertness. He's not my wolf, Annie said automatically. The wolf's tail thumped once against the floor. Edwin raised an eyebrow. Seems to disagree. Annie glanced down at the animal, then back at Edwin. He chooses. Fair, Edwin said. The storm outside deepened. The aurora pulsed brighter, painting the interior with slow, shifting shadows. Annie broke the silence. You know what you are, don't you? Edwin didn't respond. You're a field user, she continued. Forbidden class. The words hung in the air like a charge waiting to discharge. Yes, Edwin said finally. She didn't recoil, didn't accuse. She simply nodded, as if confirming something she already suspected. They'll want you more than the data, she said. I know. Why stay here? She asked. Why hide on a dead moon? Edwin looked at his hands. Ordinary hands now, shaking slightly. Because power takes, he said. And it never gives back. Outside, something moved, slow, deliberate. A shadow passed across the sensor feed before cutting out entirely. The drone dimmed its lights. They are very close. Edwin pushed off the wall. Get some rest, he told Annie. You'll need it. And you? Edwin glanced at the lockers one last time. I'll be right here, he said. Outside, the hunters finished circling their prey. The first sensor died without warning. One moment it was feeding Edwin clean data, thermal drift, atmospheric pressure, magnetic noise, and the next it went dark, the readout collapsing into static before vanishing entirely. Edwin didn't curse. He didn't move. He simply marked the time in his head. They're cutting the perimeter quietly, he said. The drone hovered closer to the ceiling, lights dimmed. That sensor was hardened. Military-grade stealth unit, most likely. They're good. Brack doesn't send amateurs. Annie muttered from the cot. Outside, the storm shifted. The wind lost its wild, chaotic edge and settled into something steadier, controlled, predatory. Edwin had heard that sound before, just before infantry advances. Weather like this didn't happen by accident. They're using the storm as cover, Edwin said. Smart. Cruel, Annie replied. The wolf rose to its feet with effort, teeth bared. A low growl rolled from its chest, vibrating through the metal floor. It limped toward the door, nose lifted, ears swiveling. Edwin watched it carefully. What do you smell? Annie closed her eyes, focusing. Coolant, weapon vents, and ozone. Energy weapons, Edwin confirmed. Close range. The drone chimed softly. Multiple ground signatures detected. Low altitude. They're not flying anymore. Good, Edwin said. Means they're cautious. He moved fast now, methodical. The outpost transformed under his hands, not into a fortress, but into a trap. He rerouted the ventilation intake, set coolant mines beneath the snow-packed threshold, primed shock plates beneath the floor panels near the door. Annie watched him work, eyes sharp despite the pain. You've done this before. Too many times, Edwin replied. She tried to stand. Her legs trembled. Don't, Edwin snapped. I won't sit still while they come for us, she shot back. The wolf stepped between them, tail stiff, ears flattened, then sat abruptly, blocking Annie's path. She blinked. Traitor, the wolf huffed. Edwin allowed himself a brief, humorless smile. Listen to him. Another sensor dropped. Then another. They're hurting us, Annie said. Yes, Edwin agreed. They want us contained. Why not just burn the outpost down? She asked. Edwin paused. Because they want me alive, he said quietly. The drone confirmed it. Biometric tagging from earlier field spike suggests high-priority capture directive. You are listed as asset, not target. Edwin's jaw tightened. Figures. A faint metallic sound echoed through the structure. A careful step on ice. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. They're testing reactions, Edwin whispered. Seeing if we panic. Annie swallowed. What's the plan? There is no winning here, Edwin said. Only surviving long enough to move. He crossed to the back of the outpost and kicked aside a worn thermal rug. Beneath it lay a sealed hatch welded shut years ago. The geothermal vent, he said, leads into lava tubes under the ice. Annie's ears flattened. That's suicide. No, Edwin corrected. It's escape. The drone projected a schematic. Extremely narrow. High heat. Toxic gases. Low visibility. Still better than Brack, Edwin said. The wolf whined softly, staring at the hatch. We lower him first, Edwin continued. Winch system. He won't like it. He hates confined spaces, Annie said. Edwin met her eyes. He'll hate being dissected more. The outpost lights flickered. Then the power dipped. They're tapping the grid, the drone warned. Non-invasive siphon. They're patient. Edwin exhaled slowly. All right, that's enough waiting. He walked to the lockers. The wolf growled softly. Annie watched as Edwin placed his palm on the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lock disengaged with a heavy, final clunk. Inside, matte black armor hung like a sleeping corpse. Beside it rested the gauntlets, silver filaments woven through dark material, faintly humming as if they recognized him. Annie's breath caught. You said you wouldn't, she whispered. I said I wouldn't start a war, Edwin replied. This is just negotiation. He pulled the gauntlets on. The connection was instant and violent. Pain lanced up his arms, biting into his nervous system. The familiar hum settled into his bones like a parasite waking from hibernation. The wolf backed away, hackles rising. It's okay, Edwin said, voice strained. I'm still me. Annie wasn't convinced. A sharp hiss echoed from the door. Metal glowed red. They're cutting through, the drone said. 30 seconds. Edwin turned toward Annie. When I give the word, you take the wolf and go down the vent. No hesitation. And you? She demanded. I'll slow them. That's not slowing, Annie snapped. That's dying. Edwin's eyes met hers. Steady, resolved. I've done worse for less. The wolf growled, stepping closer to Edwin now, pressing its massive head briefly against his leg. Edwin stiffened, surprised. Yeah, he murmured. I know. The cutting torch screamed louder. The door bulged inward. Edwin raised his hands. The storm outside roared in response, as if the universe itself leaned closer to watch. The hunt was over. Now came the fight. The moment stretched thin, fragile as ice under pressure. The cutting torch screamed at the door, metal glowing brighter by the second, but inside the outpost, time slowed. The storm's roar faded into background noise as something heavier settled in its place. Truth. Annie broke eye contact first. She crouched beside the wolf, running her fingers through the thick fur at his neck, careful to avoid the injured flank. The animal leaned into her touch, breathing deep and uneven, grounding itself in her presence. He won't leave without you, she said quietly. Tracker wolves don't abandon pack. Not even for orders. Edwin flexed his fingers, the gauntlets humming softly. I'm not part of his pack. The wolf lifted its head and fixed Edwin with an unblinking stare. Annie exhaled. He disagrees. For a moment, despite everything. The approaching soldiers, the glowing door, the storm that wanted them dead. Edwin almost laughed. Almost. He lowered his hands. Sit, he said to the wolf. The massive animal hesitated, then obeyed. Edwin blinked. Ha! Annie smiled faintly. Congratulations. You've been evaluated. Her smile faded just as quickly. You don't have to do this, she said. You could still run. Take the vent now. Leave us. The data would die with me. Edwin shook his head. I've run enough. She studied his face, the lines carved by cold and regret, the eyes that had seen too much and kept going anyway. What happened to you? She asked. Edwin hesitated. The torch cut deeper into the door, sparks spraying across the ice outside. Still, he answered. 10 years ago, he said, voice low. I was given a choice. Hold the line or retreat. Civilians behind us. Command promised support. Annie listened, still attentive. They lied, Edwin continued. They wanted the enemy to commit. We were bait. Her jaw tightened. I heard the bombardment, he said. I felt the ground melt. I used the field to save myself. Just myself. The gauntlets hummed louder, responding to his pulse. Kale was still out there, Edwin said. Calling for me. Annie's ears flattened. I didn't go, Edwin finished. I survived. And every day after that felt stolen. Silence filled the room. The wolf lowered its head, a soft sound escaping its throat. Not a growl, not a whine. Something mournful. You came for us, Annie said softly, even knowing it was a trap. Edwin looked away. I didn't want to hear that voice again and do nothing. Annie stood slowly, pain written across her posture, but stubbornness holding her upright. She stepped closer to him. In my culture, she said, a promise isn't spoken lightly. We call it a claw. Once it sinks in, it doesn't come out without tearing flesh. Edwin frowned. I didn't promise anything. You did, she replied. When you came back for the wolf. She reached out, hesitating only a moment before placing her hand over his chest. He felt her heartbeat. Fast. Alive. You chose us, she said. That binds you. Edwin swallowed. The door screamed as the torch breached the final layer. The drone dropped its voice to a whisper. 10 seconds. Annie looked up at Edwin, golden eyes fierce and steady. If you go down fighting, don't do it because you think you deserve it. Why else? Edwin asked. Do it, she said. Because we deserve to live. The wolf rose and pressed its massive weight against Edwin's leg again, solid and warm and stubbornly alive. Edwin closed his eyes for half a second. Then he nodded. Pack rules, he muttered. I hate pack rules. Annie smiled sharp, feral, determined. Good, she said. Because we're terrible at following orders. The torch cut through. Metal warped. Light spilled into the room. Edwin raised his hands again, not as a weapon, but as a shield. Get to the hatch, he ordered. Annie grabbed the wolf's harness, muscles straining as she pulled him toward the back of the outpost. The wolf paused once, turning its head to look at Edwin. Edwin met its gaze. I'll be right behind you, he said. The wolf huffed, then moved. The door burst inward, and everything after that would burn. The door came apart in a shower of sparks and screaming metal. Cold air and snow exploded into the outpost as the blast panel tore free, ripped outward by a force that wasn't just mechanical. Floodlights cut through the storm, harsh and blinding, pinning the interior in white glare. Edwin stepped forward into it. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He raised his hands. The first wave of fire hit a fraction of a second later. Suppressed rail rounds, hypersonic, invisible until they struck. Edwin clenched his fists. The air in front of him thickened. The rounds shattered against an invisible wall, fragments spraying harmlessly to the sides, clattering against the floor like rain. The recoil slammed back into Edwin's skull, pain spiking white-hot, but he held. Contact. Field user confirmed. Someone yelled outside. Edwin moved. He shoved forward with his right hand, not pushing the soldiers, but the space between them. The compressed air detonated outward like a hammer blow. 2 troopers were flung backward into the storm, disappearing into the white void with distant, hollow impacts. Behind him, Annie dragged the wolf toward the open hatch. The animal growled in protest, claws scraping metal as it resisted the narrow opening. I know, Annie grunted. I hate it too. A soldier vaulted through the ruined doorway, landing impossibly light on the floor. His boots barely dented the frost. Null-gravity suit. Edwin saw it instantly. New toys, he muttered. The trooper raised his weapon. Edwin snapped his wrist. The gravity around the man twisted, not crushing, not lifting, skewing. The trooper stumbled as his center of mass shifted sideways. Annie fired. The shot took the suit at the knee. Coolant burst in a cloud of vapor. The trooper collapsed, suddenly heavy again, sinking hard into the ice. Nice aim, Edwin barked. Learned from a stubborn old human. Annie shot back. The outpost shook as something heavy landed on the roof. Edwin felt it through the field like a bruise. They're above us, the drone screamed. Multiple units. They are adapting. A net launcher fired. Edwin barely had time to react. The weighted mesh expanded midair, crackling with energy, designed to disrupt field manipulation. He caught it, but the feedback slammed into him like a freight train. His vision flashed white. He roared and twisted. The net reversed direction, whipping back through the doorway and wrapping around 2 soldiers outside. Their screams cut short as the current discharged. Blood trickled freely from Edwin's nose now, dripping onto the floor. Edwin, Annie shouted. We're clear, move. The wolf slipped partway into the hatch, then stopped. A shadow loomed at the doorway. One of the troopers stepped through, larger, heavier, armor marked with command insignia. His weapon hummed, charging. Edwin turned. Too slow. The blast hit him square in the chest. The world flipped end over end as he slammed into the far wall, breath ripped from his lungs. He slid down, dazed, the gauntlets flickering. Edwin! Annie screamed. The trooper advanced. The wolf moved. Slate launched himself with a snarl that cut through the storm, slamming into the trooper's side. Jaws clamped down on a cable bundle running along the suit's spine. Metal tore. The trooper howled, firing wildly as the wolf dragged him sideways. A shot caught Slate's shoulder, spinning him hard across the floor. Slate! Annie cried. Rage flooded her face. She raised the rifle and fired, not at the trooper, but at the ceiling supports above him. The weakened beam collapsed, dumping half a ton of ice and metal onto the soldier. He vanished under it. Edwin forced himself upright, head pounding, vision swimming. Go! He rasped. Now! Annie grabbed the wolf's harness again, hauling him the rest of the way into the hatch. The winch screamed as it took the weight, lowering Slate into darkness. The drone zipped past Edwin. You are at critical neural load. Continuing will result in permanent damage or death. Edwin wiped blood from his eyes. Then we're right on schedule. Another blast rocked the outpost. Edwin turned back to the door, raised both hands, and pulled. The remaining soldiers were yanked forward as gravity inverted beneath their feet. They slammed into the doorway, armor crunching, weapons skittering across the ice. Edwin staggered back, nearly falling into the hatch himself. Annie reached up from below, grabbing his arm. I've got you. Edwin looked down at her. Fur dusted with frost, eyes blazing with fear and determination. Don't let go, he gasped. I won't, she said. Claws sunk. The outpost groaned, a long, dying sound. Edwin made his decision. He slammed his hand into the floor and released everything he was holding back. The supports beneath the outpost buckled as the gravity field spiked and vanished. The floor gave way. Edwin and Annie dropped. Heat rushed up to meet them as they slid down the geothermal shaft, metal screaming against rock, steam filling their lungs. Edwin barely had time to pull Annie close before they were swallowed by darkness. They crashed into something soft and wet, moss, fungal growth, ancient life clinging to warmth beneath the ice. Silence followed. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the drone's light flickered on. Status, it whispered. Miraculously, alive. Edwin lay on his back, staring into the dark, chest heaving. The outpost above them collapsed entirely, sealing the shaft with thunderous finality. They were underground now, trapped, alive, and hunted. But for the first time since the storm began, Edwin allowed himself a single, exhausted thought. They didn't die in the snow. The tunnels beneath Sable Hollow were alive. Not in the way forests or oceans lived, but in a slow, ancient way. Heat breathed through cracked stone. Condensation dripped from the ceiling in steady rhythms, echoing like a pulse. Bioluminescent fungus clung to the walls, casting soft blue light that barely pushed back the darkness. Edwin staggered forward, using the tunnel wall to stay upright. Every nerve in his body screamed. The gauntlets hung heavy on his hands now, their hum unstable, erratic, like a machine begging to be shut down. Each step sent another spike of pain through his skull. You're burning out, Annie said quietly, keeping pace despite her injuries. I can hear it in your breathing. Edwin didn't answer. He was listening to something else. A low vibration. Not the storm. Not the tunnels. Something deeper. The lattice ruins, he said. We're close. The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast cavern, and Annie stopped short. Before them rose the ruins. Black metal pillars, impossibly tall and perfectly geometric, pierced the cavern ceiling like the ribs of a buried god. They hummed softly, resonating with the same frequency as the aurora above. Only here, underground, the sound felt focused, intentional. Slate limped forward, ears flattened, eyes wide. The collar around his neck pulsed faintly, responding to the structure. This place isn't dead, Annie whispered. It's waiting. They reached the central platform, a circular plinth of smooth, glass-like material that was warm to the touch. Symbols rippled beneath its surface, rearranging themselves as Edwin approached. The drone scanned frantically. This system predates the colonies, predates recorded history. It's not just a transmitter, it's a stabilizer. Annie swallowed. It can punch through the interference, broadcast the data everywhere. Edwin nodded slowly. But it won't open for just anyone. She looked at him, then really looked at him. You feel it too, she said. Yes. The ruins recognized him. The moment stretched. Then the cavern filled with light. Boots hit stone behind them. Soft, controlled, impossibly light. Edwin turned as figures emerged from the tunnels. Null-gravity troopers, weapons raised. And behind them, floating inches above the ground, came Silas Brack. His armor was pristine, chromed, threaded with glowing blue veins that mirrored the aurora's pulse. He smiled when he saw Edwin. There you are, Brack said pleasantly. You always did run toward problems. You killed civilians, Edwin replied. You used my dead friend's voice. Brack shrugged. Tools are tools. His gaze flicked to the plinth. Step away from the interface. Annie positioned herself between Brack and Slate. The data's already in motion. Brack laughed. No, it isn't. This machine doesn't respond to intent. It responds to resonance. He looked straight at Edwin. It wants you. Edwin's chest tightened. Biological field users generate harmonic variance, Brack continued. Your kind can't help it. That's why the lattice rejects my suit. Annie's voice trembled. Edwin, you knew, Edwin said to her. She didn't deny it. I knew it needed a user, she said. I didn't know it would need this. Brack spread his hands. Open it for me, Edwin. Do that, and they walk away. He nodded toward Annie and the wolf. The gauntlets screamed as the field surged, responding to Edwin's rising heart rate. The ruins pulsed brighter, hungry. Edwin looked at Annie, at the wolf standing between her and the soldiers, blood still staining his fur. You used me, Edwin said. Annie stepped forward, eyes wet but unflinching. I trusted you. Brack sneered. Touching. Now choose. The storm above roared, even here beneath the ice. The lattice began to sing, a sound that threaded itself into Edwin's bones. He felt the universe pulling on him, inviting him to open the door fully, to become what he had been made to be. Edwin closed his eyes. Then he stepped forward and placed his hands on the ancient machine. The moment Edwin touched the plinth, the universe answered. The ruins flared white-hot, symbols racing beneath the glass surface as if something deep inside had taken its first breath in centuries. The hum rose into a scream. Not sound, but pressure, vibrating through bone and thought alike. Edwin gasped. The field rushed through him unchecked, no longer a tool but a flood. He saw gravity lines stretch and bend, saw space itself tighten like a clenched fist. The noise he had spent 10 years running from came roaring back. Planets grinding, stars dragging their weight across the dark. Brack laughed. Yes, that's it. Open it. Edwin staggered, blood pouring freely now, vision fracturing into light and shadow. He felt memories slipping. Faces, names, moments, peeled away by the surge. Annie screamed his name. Upload at 30%, the drone shouted. Stability decreasing rapidly. Brack floated closer, triumphant. You were never meant to stop this. You were meant to power it. Edwin's hands trembled against the plinth. Then he understood. The lattice didn't want domination. It wanted choice. Edwin looked at Annie, really looked, at the way she stood over the wolf, shielding him with her body despite knowing she couldn't win, at the fear in her eyes held in check by trust. Brack raised his hand, his suit glowing brighter. Finish it. Edwin smiled. A small, broken thing. No, he whispered. He didn't open the channel. He inverted it. Edwin grabbed the convergence point, the raw stream of energy pouring down from the aurora, and twisted it, forcing the lattice to reverse polarity. The ancient machine screamed as if in pain, then obeyed. The field ripped through Edwin like fire. Command accepted. A voice echoed, not spoken, but felt. Resonance verified. The broadcast erupted outward. Not just data, but truth. Holographic projections burst into the cavern and the sky above, replaying Brack's orders in brutal clarity. Executions, purges, experiments. His voice carried across every channel the lattice could reach. No! Brack roared, slamming controls on his suit. Stabilize! The inverted field tore through his armor. The blue veins flared, then fractured, energy backfiring into the system he had stolen. Gravity folded in on itself around him. Brack screamed once. Then space collapsed. He vanished in a violent implosion of light and silence, leaving nothing but scorched air and falling snow. The troopers scattered, weapons clattering as their systems failed. Upload complete, the drone shouted. Sector-wide transmission confirmed. Edwin felt the field snap. Not outward, but inward. Something inside his mind burned, collapsed, went dark. The hum vanished. The noise, the endless crushing noise, was gone. Edwin fell. He hit the stone hard, breath torn from his lungs, vision fading to black. For a heartbeat he thought this was death. Then warmth. Hands on his face. "Edwin," Annie whispered desperately. "Stay with me, please." He opened his eyes. The aurora above the ruins was retreating, the sky clearing inch by inch as stars returned, cold and distant. The storm was breaking. "I can't feel it," Edwin rasped. Annie froze. "Feel what?" "The field," he said. "It's gone." The gauntlets lay dark and silent at his sides. Annie laughed through tears and pulled him into her, careful of his injuries. "You did it," she sobbed. "You ended it." The drone hovered unsteadily. Neurological scan indicates complete burnout of field capability. Edwin closed his eyes, then exhaled. "Good," he said faintly. "I was tired of hearing the universe scream." Slate limped over and nudged Edwin's shoulder with his massive head, letting out a soft, uncertain sound. Edwin smiled weakly and rested his hand against the wolf's fur. Above them, rescue beacons flared in the distance. The truth was out. The storm was gone, and Edwin finally was free. 3 months later, winter still ruled Sable Hollow. Snow drifted endlessly across the plains, soft and patient, burying old scars beneath fresh white. The sky was clear now, no black aurora, no screaming distortion. Just stars, cold and distant, doing what stars had always done. The outpost stood again. Not the same one. This version was patched together from salvage and stubbornness. The blast door didn't quite fit, and one wall hummed when the temperature dropped, but it was solid. Lived in. Edwin sat in his chair, sleeves rolled up, a small toaster spread open on the table in front of him. He frowned at its exposed wiring, soldering iron poised like the fate of breakfast depended on it. "It worked yesterday," he muttered. A heavy shape settled against his leg. Slate sat down hard, pinning Edwin's foot to the floor with deliberate finality. The wolf sighed and closed his eyes, perfectly content. Edwin winced. "You're crushing my toes." Slate did not move. "That means he likes you," Annie said from the doorway. She stepped inside, brushing snow from her jacket, ears twitching in the warmth. She looked healthier now, stronger. The weight of running was gone from her shoulders. She set a crate on the table. "Real coffee," she said, "from a place that still exists." Edwin's eyebrows rose. "I might forgive you for lying to me." "Might," she agreed, smiling. Outside, a patrol craft passed overhead. Not hunting, not threatening, just watching. The sector was changing. Edwin finished the repair and plugged the toaster in. Popped once, unevenly, but stayed quiet. Progress. Annie leaned beside him, watching the snow fall through the viewport. "Do you miss it?" she asked softly. Edwin glanced at his hands. Ordinary hands. Steady. Silent. "Sometimes," he said. "I miss the view, but not the noise." Slate's tail thumped once. Edwin smiled. Outside, the storm would come again someday. Storms always did. But for now, the outpost was warm, the wolf was heavy, and the future, dangerous as it was, finally felt earned. And Edwin wasn't waiting to die anymore. He was staying.